Okay, give me just a moment here. Okay. And skadoosh. Hey y'all. Yes, I've added a kind of a techno frame around everything. I've also edited the actual sculpting side of things. The when my camera's down here and you got the screen here, it makes the window a little bit smaller, just a little bit, but it lets you see the whole thing so that my big old head isn't blocking stuff. Yeah. Since most of you are watching after the fact on YouTube, don't forget the whole like, subscribe, bell icon, and that sort of thing. And before we get into tonight's sculpt, I'm just going to show off a couple things I've been working on. Right now, I'm about halfway through painting my pokey tool. Basically, just something to sit there and poke the tips of paint bottles if they're being a bit obstinate, so I don't accidentally squeeze and go splurt. And yes, this is Warcolor's Cool Gray, transparent Cool Gray, no less. Yeah, there you go, transparent Cool Gray. Anyway, that's still basically all I gotta do is eyes and teethies and then coat it and clear coat it. Hit it with a big old a clear coat. A bukake of clear coat. I did not say that. Need some soda. Now, one thing. As below says, I have started doing this on Twitch. I'm very erratic as to when I'm on Twitch. I should say restarting, because a little over a year ago I switched from Twitch to YouTube. It may have been more than a year ago, I don't remember. But anyway, tonight is a Patreon sculpt, and what that means... And what that means is I'm sculpting for one of my patrons. Now, the past couple weeks in a row, my patron has not shown up. So tonight, what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and finish the Axolotl from a couple nights ago, or a couple weeks ago, that I was unable to finish because of issues. And that's for E235, if I remember correctly. Now, it is 10 till 8. And that means that you guys will get to see me start just a little bit early with the Dad Studio side of things. There we go. As you can see, got a frame now. And cool. Okay, now we have the Axolotl here. This is the base geometry for my human. What you say? Human? Yes, I say human. Altered to be a humanoid axolotl. No, he does not have a tail. So what we are going to use for the tail, in the earlier edition, I had me a tail that fit, but it was a separate figure. It should have no problems here, except it's way too big, and it's sticking out from the center of his back. I don't think an axolotl's tail comes from the center of his back. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to shrink it a little bit. And by shrinking it, it fits perfectly. There we go. And then we're going to parent it to his hip. Okay. We're also going to start with tail number 1 here. We're going to bend it forward. We're going to bring it forward so it flows out of the back a bit better. Now this does mean we're going to need to kind of tweak its physical position. So, there. And there we have the position of the tail. Actually, we can make this a little bit bigger. Let's... And then we're going to use the position of the tail here. There. That's about as good as we can get for that. But that's not a big deal. Okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start posing him. Have anybody awake in chat? No, we don't. Okay, hitting on the hip. Now, when you're posing a figure, the hip must be not parallel to the ground. And basically, this is your hip. It's parallel to the ground. You're not going to look like you're even alive. You're going to look like a mannequin. Yeah. If it's slightly tilted, as long as it's not just a perfect, it's going to be slightly unparalleled in every aspect. By the same token, the line of the shoulders, plane going through here, also needs to be unparalleled, not just to the ground, but also to the hips. Even if you're standing at dead-on attention. Okay. So, we're going to rotate this way and kind of pivot it a little bit forward. And because he's an axolotl, he's going to have more of a forward-canted stance with the torso and abdomen bending backwards. Now, it'll be a bit awkward, but we're going to bring this leg forward and bend the knee. We're going to bring it out to the side a little bit and twist it. Okay. And then this leg will be twisted to the side and taken out a lot to the side. We're going to go to the front view. And we're going to see we need to rotate the whole thing a little bit forward. There we go. Now we're going to hit Control D to drop it to the ground. And we see that we're not quite done yet. So what we're going to do, we're going to kind of pull this foot up a little bit more. Okay, now we're going to select the hip and we're going to pin it. Translation, which is moving, and rotation. And then switching to this key, selecting this foot, and we're going to pull the foot ever so slightly to the ground so that we can now, have the feet actually on the ground together. Perspective view. Okay, now we're going to side to side that one and bend it back a little, and a little bit of a twist. This one we're going to twist it. This is the chest right here. We're going to twist it even more, side to side, back the other way, and back even more, so that we get kind of that arched back for this humanoid. We're gonna actually we need to twist it this way, and this needs to twist negative. That's a bit too much negative twist for that. Okay. Now we're going to take this shoulder, bring it forward, not a lot, and up a little, and up a little. The idea being that he's going to be aiming where that arm is pointing. Neck, we're going to go back and to the side. Head, forward and to the side a little, and then both the head and neck bent at the same time to twist. Now just the head, we can bend it a little bit more. Now, looking at it, we need to actually bend this forward a bit more. We need them on balance. And now we need this thing throwing. So we're going to take here, but this time we're going to rotate it forward. And then we're going to bend that. Twist it so it's not going through. And as you can see, we're going to need to bring this up just a bit. Okay. Now we're going to, once again, we're going to bring this to the side. We're going to bring the collar back. And we're going to rotate the wrist a little. And then we're going to unbend this. So it's in mid-throw. Zoom out. And here's our basic axolotl with an atlatl. However, we're going to take the hand, we're going to bend it forward just a little bit. And actually, we need to bring that neck back over to the side, not quite so far, so that the little tendrils aren't interfering. Okay. And there we go. We have our axolotl with atlatl. And it's time to pose the tail. So we're going to go to the tail, click on tail 1, and we go to expand from selected. And hello, Patrick Krogh. And we're getting ready to pose the tail for this axolotl with an atlatl. This was a Patreon sculpt from someone who I swear to God was trying to give me a hard time. Because how else would you come up with an axolotl with an atlatl? Yeah. We're gonna bring it down like that. And then we're gonna take the other and come back the other way. Actually, let's go ahead, take number 3 and go the other direction. Let's get near the ground. Okay. Then we're just going to bring it once again side to side just a little bit. And then these two back the other way. All right. Now what we're going to do, we're going to hide the atlatl. We're going to export this straight out as the axolotl base. And that's going to be under New Base Figures, Patreon, Axolotl. Axolotl body. Now, when you export from DAZ Studio, it exports everything that is visible on screen, and only what is visible on screen. Which means right now it'll export the atlatl, and only the atlatl. Okay, and from there we go to ZBrush. We're going to start off by importing base figure, Patreon, Axolotl, the Z Axolotl body. It'll take a second. It's over here now, and we do this, and it's in ZBrush. Yay! We now go to Subtool, Insert, Polymesh 3D, Import, Z atlatl. Yay! And it's time to start sculpting on our axolotl. One of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to fix some of the body shaping that happened during posing, right in here mostly. I'm going to go ahead and grab my Wacom tablet, and before I start, I'm going to get some sippy soda. Alright, we're going to shrink the mouse, because the first thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of smooth out we're going to smooth out here where this wrinkle is happening. Okay, now we're going to clay build up and changing the alpha for that circular one. And then we're going to build up in here and get rid of this little divot. We're going to do this before we start doing any clothing. Then a very brief coating of smooth. Let's bring it up a little bit more. Okay, that's much better. And we're also going to kind of build up here, once again, to kind of make it a bit more organic and less oopsie. Alright, and we're going to kind of, axolotls don't have that, they've got a cloaca. Frame out. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to subdivide and dynamesh this thing. We're going to subdivide at least that many times. Delete lower. We're going to dynamesh at 1024. Dynamesh. Okay, now there's a couple places we need to go over with a full strength smooth to blend in the tail right here. That's one, and then I tap the number on one on the number row, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it blends in. And then along here on the tail, kind of smooth that. And then on this side of the tail, and the tail is fully coherent. And let's go ahead and do that real quick so we can get rid of this divot. So that's the tail. It's now fully cohesively part of the critter. Well, we can probably fix this right here. We're going to smooth out this part of the back of the shoulder. With the change in geometry into an axolotl, it didn't do well. There we go. We're going to smooth out the base of the neck because, again, we had a change in geometry which gave it this reptilian neck, or amphibian neck, but by reptilian I mean it's, you know, There. That's a more natural neck for him. I gotta get rid of that. And let's get in here real quick. And here. Now we're going to blend, we'll shrink this a little bit. We're going to blend the front of where these fins meet the head. We're going to do the same thing for the back, but not as intensely. So again, we're going through the back here. And now under the chin. We're going to use the inflate tool, which is over here. Reduce it a bit, and we're going to kind of inflate under the chin here to bring it all together. And now we can smooth it out more, and presto, it blends in pretty nicely. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to clean up this inner mouth, because really and truly we don't need, we just need it to be a little open, and then we can deal the rest with we can turn it into a closed mouth if we want, or an open one. But that is the basic atlatl. Now, amphibians do not have scales. Otherwise, I'd be adding in a whole bunch of fancy things down here on the back. What I am going to do is I'm going to use the move tool. Move, there it is. And a decently large size brush. I'm going to kind of move this over. I'm then going to shrink it and smooth out that area entire. And okay, so then we're going to use the standard tool, subtract, with that alpha. We're going to stroke and lazy mouse and turn off lazy mouse, and then we're going to drop the intensity a bit, and we're going to go over here, auto masking, back face, increase the intensity, and we're going to go ahead and make it even bigger and very lightly. Way too strong. Okay, let's drop that intensity quite a bit, and let's change that alpha for one that's a bit more, yeah. And then we're going to smooth it, and it becomes like that divot between the muscles we had before. Okay, frame out. We need to smooth out under the chest right here. And we need something for the front half of him. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here. I actually have a rope tool. And we're going to use it to make a rope belt for him. We're going to bring that down. Okay, we need to change the depth on that. That depth goes from 45, it's going to make it 12. because we want it to kind of sink in a bit. If this was an actual piece of art, we wouldn't want this to happen, but this is a figure. We want it to sink in so that it prints well and or does well on a mold. Okay, let's cut it and undo that. Now, under subtool, we're going to the belt. We're going back to move. We're going to make it a big move. We're going to grab here and kind of pull it out just a bit because it was starting to sink in a bit too much. We need it nice and very visibly present on the figure. We need it to blend in, to merge in, yeah, so that it molds, but it needs to actually be there. Like that. Okay. Now, what are we going to have hanging down here? What we're going to have, let's find out. Let's see. What can we put in here? Let's go to the light box and brush. And they have an insert mesh brush for curves. So the next thing we're going to do, from here, we're going to geometry, we're going to subdivide it to delete lower, and zoom out, and then we're just going to, under modifiers, multi-mesh selector 3, variations 25, variation selections 3, and we're going to add in a whole lot of random fur pieces. That we're then going to blend together. And then let's look around. Okay, what we're going to do with this, we're now going to hide the belt and axolotl. And we're going to blend all three of these together by merge down, always okay, merge down. Now we're going to draw on a couple more. And using the move it down, and we're going to rotate 180 degrees and a little bit more that way. So from the front, it has that look. Okay, we can move it back, rotate it back a little bit more like that. And then let's do another one. Let's do it this one. Once again, we're going to move down, rotate 180 degrees, rotate it this way a little, and bring it in. Then we're going to add in one last one. Yeah. I'm going to add in one last one of this here at the bottom. Okay. And now we are going to make the belt and that visible again. We're going to Dynamesh it. We're then going to use the Move tool to start playing around with its overall shape. For example, pulling this up so it's over there. And then making this a little bit bigger. And we're going to grab the tip and pull it down. Okay, now we're going to move or scale, and we're going to scale it and then move it, because this needs to be a little bit, among other things, a little bit thicker. So we can now move it to there, move it out to there. Okay, now we're going to hide it. Hide everything but it. And go back to draw. And with the mouse, we're going to smooth out the back. So it's one piece. We're also going to smooth out the top up here. Now, why are we smoothing out the top? And then pulling that up before smoothing? Because we're going to add smaller bits of fur on the top. But we're going to be doing it through a different method. Here we go. And this also needs to have variations, select, multi-mode. And what we're going to do is we're simply going to go here and draw that way, draw that way, draw that way. There. And now he's wearing a furred waistcloth. Not that I know what you could really do more than that. I guess what we can do is we can give him a rather large quiver on his back for more atlatl spears. That would actually be under insert belt stuff. And what we're going to do with it is we're going to make a large belt quiver, or large quiver, and then we're going to stretch it that way to be large enough for more of these javelins. We also need to pull it out from the back a bit, because there. And there we go. We have our atlatl javelin. I'm going to subdivide it a couple times. You. Select him. Subdivide him a couple times. Give him one level of, or let's say 5 levels of polish. Until we lose the... Okay. And now on him, we're going back to add another rope, this time over the shoulder. An over the shoulder quiver holder. So we go from here back over to the rope brush, which I can also go up the top. And we're going to turn on transparency because I want it to start underneath the quiver. Let's start here and come around that way. And there. And now it's going to come around the back, or come around the chest. And there we go. Let's turn off transparency and hit U. Now the reason I use U is I have defined U on the keyboard as being a key to take anything that is currently not masked and make it a new sub-object. So for example this. Now what we're going to do with this, we're actually going to scale it up a bit. Bring it down. And then we're going to do what's called inflate. Then we're going to use the I'm going to pull it back a bit, and we're going to use the move tool, a bit bigger than that. We're going to grab it and pull it in to the chest. Basically, we want this rope to be a lot thicker than the belt rope. Okay, and we're going to frame out. And under geometry, we're going to subdivide it a couple times. There's really not much else to do, simply because this is such a simple, primitive critter. It's an axolotl with an atlatl. So I'm going to show you some of what I do after the fact. Alright, we need to subdivide that atlatl because it's... And we're going to dynamesh it at 512 because we want to make sure to fuse that area. Let's zoom in on over to the hinge of the atlatl. And with inflate, we're going to inflate this area here just to make sure that it fuses over and that it's nice and solid. And then we're going to smooth it. Okay. Frame out. I guess the only thing left to do is take his face and emphasize that mouth and the eyes. And the way we're going to do that is first I'm going to get some sody. And then I'm going to peek into the... Aha! And then I'm going to... Grab this. And I'm going to use what's called the damn standard brush. Not because we're cursing at it, but because the man who named it had the initials of DAM. Yeah, it just kind of be like that sometimes. All right, and then we're going to go in and we're just going to follow the mouth. And then I'm going to hit 1 to dig it in deeper. For the eyes, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, a little bit more intense, so I don't have to dig it as deep. Now, this eye, we just go in and around. Okay. And now this eye. The thing about miniatures, you have to exaggerate all of the detail because it doesn't show, unless you do, when the figure is this tall. You know? Or even if it's a giant and it's this tall. However, doing this, zooming out, is a good way to tell if detail is showing up. For example, looking at it at about this size on my screen is good for seeing what will come out on most plastic printers, the FDM printers. Looking at it at about this size on my screen is good for seeing what will come out on most resin printers. Okay, so we've got his face defined, his gear, his waist fur. So what we do now is we merge everything down into one piece. And then in geometry, I dynamesh it. That fuses it all into one piece, one surface. So you can see here, there's now a line of polygons connecting the rope and the body, which there wasn't before. This makes it printable on even the most ornery of systems. Now we go over to Z plugin and we click on this little circle that pops over here and Decimation Master. Now there's not a lot of surface detail, it's mostly shape and form detail. So we can actually go with 35,000 triangles, or vertexes. It's actually 70,000 triangles. By the way, what do you think of the new frame here? Because this way I can put things on here and here. Like when I'm doing Twitch streaming, I can put the chat up here. If I get more than just Anycubic, I can put sponsorships here. Okay, whenever it says computing, please wait. I have to abort it. Do some kind of tiny little mesh smooth thingy just to change. And let's change this to 768. And bam. Okay. Now frame out. And let's try it again. Bam. So this Axolotl warrior. It's Adonis of amphibious activity. Oh, computing, please. Don't forget you. Okay. Well, there we go. It is now at 35,000 or 34,999 points and 70,380 triangles. And this, it will print. Yeah, there we go. So now we go up to export, and we're going to simply call this Axolotl with atlatl figure. Yay! That's it. That's done. Yay! Woo! And then I'm going to pop over to here so that we can do some little bit of talking while something else loads in. I'm starting another program, basically, because I'm going to show you how I make certain it's printable. You see, a lot of older 3D printing slicers did not like it if let's say this guy. This is my brass golem. I recently printed him on my resin printer. Let's say that, where's a good pointy thing here? Right here. Right along this rim between the upper shoulder and armor and the upper shoulder and the armor. Let's say there was a missing polygon. It was not watertight. A lot of older slicers would hit that point and go, I don't know what to do! And you'd have resin everywhere. Just total disaster. But instead, with the new ones, you don't have to worry about it as much. However, again, that's something you don't want to have to rely on. So, let me go ahead and, now that I've got this open, I can, well, better than last time. All right, what I do now is I hit this little button, and go to Import. I find the directory that it's in, find the figure, open, import. And there we go. That's our axolotl figure, right? That's our 20,000 triangle axolotl. Well, we need to find out if there's any flaws. One of the easiest way to do this is I go over here to where it says cap holes. And I click it. I right click it, collapse all. Now, if there were any holes in the geometry anywhere, when I click this, the holes that it created to cap those holes will be selected, and it'll tell me how many polygons it had to make to cap them. Bam! 198 polygons, and most of them are itty-bitty. So itty-bitty, we probably won't be able to see them unless we zoom in closely. Let's see, are there any visible around here? Aha, there's a couple. Right around in here. Alrighty. So, that is the first primary test. And I'm just going to file export selected. Once again, go back to the directory. Make sure I'm saving as an OBJ. Click on it. Save. Yes, I want to replace it. I do not need to create texture coordinates for it, so export. Done. Now I need to make an STL version, so I simply go to export without going to export selected. I go to OBJ just so I can grab the name, and then STL. I delete the OBJ extension, and save it as binary, and it is done. That is the initial test. I can test it again by opening Mesh Mixer. Mesh Mixer opens small even if you have it going large. So I go to Import. I go up to New Base Figure, Patreon, Axolotl, load in Axolotl with atlatl. Now it loads in like this because it doesn't like rotating OBJ files. I go to Analysis, Inspector, and there's there's quite a few spots on the back, but fixing it would cause it to go nuts. However, these spots are purple. They don't it doesn't do a lot. And if you use it, it does that to it. It smooshes it all. Control Z. Inspector. Let's go to Smooth Fill. Ew. No. That gets rid of Inspector. Flat Fill. Again, it still blends that. But again, these are not actual flaws. Mesh Mixer thinks they are because their polygon's out of order. Let's go ahead and close that. Don't save. We're going to go to Dad Studio, and just so I can have something in the background when I close 3D Studio Max. And we're going to delete. Not going to delete anything. Instead, we're now going to open recent, render 2500% figure pose. Like to save the current scene by loading it? No. Okay. And we're going to file, import, Axolotl with atlatl. And it loads in really tiny. There's a reason for this. I'll explain it in a second. We come in, we change the scale to 2500, and we rotate it. Then we start lowering the scale a little bit until it fits on the page. Actually, we can make it go a little bit more because we're going to be bringing it down. Now, this is the file that I use to make thumbnails for Thingiverse. That's why it's got the space on the right and the left. It would be better off, well, let me go ahead and copy selected items. Then I'm going to go to File, Open Recent, Render 2500. File, Import, Model Figure. There we go. Paste. And then I'm going to move the camera a little bit like that. Okay, perfect. Now I go to Surfaces, Content Library, and Shaders. This is a variant on the wax shader, which is why I had to increase the size. As things stand, if I use the default wax shader at normal size, it would look like glass. Instead, now be aware, this may slow down the broadcast, okay? Boom. And Control O, and I find the atlatl. Okay, here's our image. I'm going to select it all, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. I basically duplicate layer without having to worry about hitting duplicate layer. Control Shift U to make it black and white, and then Control Shift L to make the shading more extreme. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger so you can see it a little bit better. Now, over here under layers for the blending type, I changed to luminosity. This is what the original render looked like. This is it with the increased contrast. I hit Control Shift E, and let's put it back at 100%. And it's a lot more dramatic and a lot more detail can be seen, especially in that waistcloth and in the ropes. So I hit Control S, Enter, Control W, and now I pop back here. Bing. So that is how I finish and render the figures for broadcast, or not broadcast, for distribution. So I did notice that my own playback went down. Having done that, I guess the next thing to do is just sit here and it's not even 9 o'clock. I started shortly before, just an hour ago. I guess I can show what I'm working on right now. This rather grinchy looking thing is a handle on a paperclip, so that if my paint bottles get clogged, I can just pokey. By using a paper clip, I'm using a much more rigid surface. And yes, I'm using a Watercolors paint I never have used and never will, transparent gray. I got to paint his teethies and his eyes, and then I'm going to give him a heavy-duty gloss coat. And it's on both sides. There is a product like this available from Reaper Miniatures. It probably be a little bit better quality, but their topper for this is a skull. It's a skull. Also, the broad part is a little bit thicker, which no problem on your typical Vallejo, etc., bottle. But some of my bottles, where is it? Did I put it back in here? Yes, I did. Some of my bottles, like this one coat line from Watercolor that I do use all the time, have a much thinner neck, and the larger Reaper pokies won't go in. But this 1mm paper clip, whoops, does. So, working on tools and even making the tools fancy. And I'm just going to go ahead and wipe this off because I don't want red all in the gray, even if I never use it. And I'm using the gray as a kind of like a stand while I paint this. Now, I don't know if Matt Shelton is watching tonight or watching after the fact. I did manage to get your figure printed. This is Brock the Warlock. I don't think he has used his crossbow in since the day that we started the campaign. Not with Eldritch Blast going zark, 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 zark. But also got this guy. It's like I said earlier, it's a brass golem. I've got him printed and painted. Yes, it is one of mine. It's an old one of mine, actually, from way back when I first started doing sculpting for 3D printing. If I was doing it now, the detailing would be much more defined, because this detailing is pretty much geared towards just insinuating high detail on an FDM print. But the reason I printed that, I got me an airbrush. I got me an airbrush compressor. I got me some practice over the past couple days. I'm going to do some more practice tomorrow. And then I'm going to use a combination of airbrush and brush to turn this sucker into non-metallic metal. I'm going to use non-metallic paints. You know, your basic ordinary paints with no metal flakes, like this Troll Claws, which, by the way, I've never used before. This could be interesting. To make this appear metal. To be exact, it's going to appear gold and bronze. Whatever you do, sculpting, painting, anything, always learn new ways to do it. Always try to keep up with the newest thing. Not because it's better, but because if you're not learning, you're not growing. If you're not growing, what are you doing? I may never use non-metallic metal again after I manage to get it down pat. I may never use the loaded brush technique, which, by the way, the point of the loaded brush is that the majority of the brush would have the darker paint, from, well, there's a cat hair, from about here down would be filled with thinned dark paint. And just the absolute tip up here would have a little bit of lighter paint. And you go side to side like this. And it blends as you go. When I get that down pat, I may never use it again. But knowing the techniques not only means I know, hey, this would be a good place to use that technique. Learning a new way to move the brush helps with brush control, just as much as painting a new figure. And if anyone's watching on the from the Wednesday game, I couldn't resist it. It's a mimic that used to be a bed, by Reaper, not by me. 2018 RMP made in China. But yeah, it's the mimic bed. It's like it was back here and it like folded in half. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it's almost 9 o'clock. As before, we still haven't had... Oh, we have a visitor. We have my self-appointed co-host trying to climb up and over my shoulder. What are you doing, Buzz? Are you doing well today? What? What are you doing? Yeah. Anyway, self-appointed co-host. There we go. What are you doing? So, I guess the next thing to do is get the guy's email address and send him the file. Would that be next? Ralph? Are you paying attention or are you staring at the paints? I think he's staring at the paints. No, he's staring at the hand. That's what he's staring at. No? What are you staring at, Fuzzy? Really? He thinks he's a dog. He even plays fetch with one of his toys. Alright, so it's early, I know, but I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I got what I needed to do done today. There's only one person in the show watching me, which is kind of disheartening. And I guess I'll just go ahead and poof. As usual, I'm going to stick my hand up here, ignore the red paint on my finger. I'm going to count from 5 to 1. When I get to 1, I'm going to say something goofy and then go and then sign out. That's to try and make sure that I've covered the what do you call it? As my brain shuts down. I've covered the lag. That's the word. Yeah, lag. That's the word. From YouTube. So, that's going to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What has 15 actors, 4 settings, 2 authors, and 1 plot? 672 Hallmark movies.